Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. I'm your host and a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero, as if it would be somebody else. Anyway, it's been about a month since I put out another episode. We're in 2014, part 2, back in San Bruno. And, last weekend I was able to go to the A's versus Astros baseball game with longtime friend Jen Gerhardt, and we had a few laughs. It was like old times. She broke my balls for a few hours. I put up with it. Then I got a chance to drive over to San Bruno and visit Daniela and Mike and meet their new baby son, Nico. And we started having a conversation about my past and things that were going on. And there's a lot of things disclosed that weren't discussed before, and it felt good to hang out. But it's funny because the entire 4-hour time I was there was about my recovery and things I was going through, and the reason people were doing and saying the things they were doing and saying, and people's perception of my mess, and people not knowing how to handle it. And it was good talk. We had a great time, getting to chat about certain things going on. And I've really been trying to shorten these episodes. I thought that was going to be like 1 year per episode, but as you can see, there's been a lot of things going on with me in the last 15 to 20 years, and especially in the last 10. So I'm going to kind of try to keep these things about 15 to 20 minutes long, because I keep on getting up to about a half an hour, and I'm aware of that. So I'm back out here for a little therapy through transparency, as I like to say. And yes, I coined that. Didn't get that from anybody else. And one of the things that came to mind was the power of people's words. We tend to use words and we don't realize that we might be altering the truth based on how we use words. So one of the things that came up was, for me, I used to get very, very resentful when people would call me and say, "Hey Dan, I hear you're drinking again." Okay? Now I want you to take a good look at that statement. Dan is drinking again. That depicts a person who is consistently on the bottle daily, abusing alcohol, has given up, and can't stop. Dan is drinking again. Versus the truth, which was Dan drank for a couple days. So I get these calls, and I would be like a few days or weeks sober, and people would say, "Dan, I hear you're drinking again," when the fact was Dan drank. I would have these little relapses here for a couple days, and I'd stop, and then I'd be back on the wagon. And these things would hurt me, and it would bother me, because it wasn't the truth, because the facts were being altered to a more pathetic state than what was going on. Now, yeah, I've told you some stories that were mind-blowing, and I can't believe I went through some of these things and didn't behave the ways I was doing these things, but at the same time, it really bothered me. And when you're in an angry mode already, and you're really upset with the world and how things are going in certain relationships, and you're trying to fight alcoholism, it's very helpful to have all the facts. So keep that in mind. What we do and say is, can have great impact on somebody, especially if it's defaming somebody's character without you even trying to intend to do that. The power of our words. It was told to me, make sure that what you say is true, necessary, and helpful. Most of the time, because obviously we're not going to do that all the time, because we're not perfect human beings. Necessary, helpful, and true. So, speaking of San Bruno, I had left off last episode. I was living with Danny and his family, and he put me up for about a month. I was looking for work, and so I landed a job at the Macaroni Grill as a server, and I got into this apartment with some clean and sober guys that I knew in San Bruno on the historic San Anselmo Avenue on the east side of Trent City, USA. And I was going through this child visitation battle, in court. Every few months we'd have these reviews, and I was happy to be back on the peninsula, and I was happy to be back in working in the restaurant. And I remember about 3 weeks after I started as a server at the Macaroni Grill, I got promoted to an opening management position. So I'd open the restaurant in the morning, got the keys, count the money, set up the drawers, do the floor map, yada, yada, yada. And then I I take a long break and then I come back and I'd serve at nighttime, right? So my confidence was quickly back up. See, one thing I can say about myself over the years, and me and Daniela were talking about this, no matter how many times I fell, I still had that Dan the man determination. Yes, I blew it, made major league mistakes, but for some reason I always had that I have to be the man, I can do this, I can come back mentality. Many times I gave up, many times I got into these pathetic, lowly situations, and for some reason I was blessed with this slight determination. And I'm not saying this for a pat on the back, I'm trying not to say this in an egotistical way. But when we were talking the other night, Danielle had mentioned this fall that I had, right? And she was dead on. I had to be Dan the man. I was the most egotistical party animal, wanted to wear the best clothes, throw the best parties, be with the most women. Those were my goals, right? And when you get an egomaniac like this, who put up this big front of being unstoppable for all those years, and then for this alcoholism to take over my life and put me down to where I've been, it's a tremendous fall. And not a lot of people can come back from these things. But through a lot of prayer and self-examination, I was lucky to do that. And I'm not saying that because, oh, I'm so courageous and I'm so brave. But this determination, we're in this entitled society nowadays, where we get distracted so easily by other things. If something's not comfortable, humans won't do it. Or they get all these outs, excuses, distractions, and we get held down by our society. And I see this with many, many recovering addicts and alcoholics. They just don't feel like doing certain things because they seem unnecessary. And I've been there. If something was unnecessary to me or a nuisance, I wouldn't do it. I want everything handed to me. I want things done the easy way, right? Because I felt I was entitled to it. And this was one of my greatest defective characteristics that I've had over the years, but I'm aware of it now. The Entitlement Cure by Dr. John Townsend. Dr. John, can you believe this? Better do a breathalyzer right now. Dr. John Townsend, The Entitlement Cure. On page 144, he says, the problem is that when I focus on someone rather than myself, I grow less powerful and more important, or more dependent. I give power to others, making it much less likely that I'll have the power to get my life together. Again, the problem is that when I focus on someone other than myself, I grow less powerful and more dependent. I give power to others, making it much less likely that I'll have the power to get my life together. I deserve thinking leads to a passive victim mentality. People shut down and refuse to make choices. They wait for someone else to make things better for them. So I was obsessed over this child situation, right? I was being wronged and I was obsessing over it. I was not taking the principles and the tools that I was given day in, day out, and applying them. I wanted my daughter's mother to change. I wanted her to get off my ass. I wanted her to bend. I wanted her to be able to coexist with me. It wasn't happening, and I was not able to accept it. And I obsessed, and I drove myself into insanity over and over and over again. And I could not be an effective human being, like I've said over and over again in all these episodes, right? So I deserve weakens and I am responsible empowers. That's the message in that chapter there of the Entitlement Cure. Pick it up, man. I'm telling you, it's a revolutionary book. So, I'm promoted, I'm doing well, I'm feeling good, but I'm obsessed over this whole child thing, right? So I get this notice I remember in the mail. It's an email. And one of the lowest forms of humanity at the time, because I'm hoping that she's changed, this no good lawyer, Athena McMahon, was putting all of these thoughts into my daughter's mother's mind, right, for leverage in this child case. And there was criminal charges being filed against me for, restraining orders and all this other nonsense. She was using this to remain in control. And I remember I got this document and I'm reading through it in the email, and there was 19 out of 22 statements were false. And I was ready to blow my stack. If a lawyer is going to get into the profession for the best interest of children and be sincere and live a life of integrity, I would think that they would have their facts straight. Don't go into a courtroom making blatantly false statements about another person, okay, for leverage. Now, things didn't backfire as fast as I would have liked them to, but they did, and hence is the life I have today, and the truth came out down the road, but it didn't come in to play as soon as I wanted it to, right? So I was unable to accept these filthy, disgusting lies that were being said on these documents, right? And I remember I had my daughter's mother on the line, and I said, there's two different types of people. There's a person who is lying to hurt somebody, to screw with their head, and there's a person who's delusional and actually believes the things that they're saying, okay? So I remember I told her, I said, I hope to God that you are trying to hurt me by making these statements. I hope you're trying to hurt me. Because if you actually believe the stuff that you are putting in these documents for that court, there's something seriously wrong with you, okay? Now, like I said, eventually it all come out in the wash because they went to the well once too many, but that's for a later episode. So I was obsessing over this, I was upset, and there's nothing I could do about it. All I could do is just go in the courtrooms and conduct myself the best way I could on a day-to-day basis to remain sober. So I had to do these drug and alcohol tests for 90 days randomly. So I had no car at the time, right? So I get these calls in the morning saying, hey, you need to come up here to South San Francisco and test, right? So I'd have to drop everything, take the train or bus or whatever I had to do all the way to South City, get there on time, piss in this cup, and so this went on and on. In the meantime, work's going great. I really felt appreciated by the great management staff over there at Macaroni Grill at the time. Just really good guys, and I met some real characters on the staff as far as the cooks and the other servers. Met some really interesting people. To this day, I'm still friends with a couple of them. I still see them out, whether they're working at other restaurants or to see them out on the town. Some of them are actually starting to get into recovery themselves. So I remember I was holding it together, and I remember Mother's Day was great. My mom drove in from Santa Rosa to the Macaroni Grill. My sister and her boyfriend and my two nieces came, and we all had a nice lunch on Mother's Day at Macaroni Grill. And they all left, and everything was good. My mom was so happy to see me. I remember I was wearing this nice paisley shirt, looking all DTM'd out as normal, and things were just looking like we're back on track. My mom didn't have to worry about me being homeless, and where am I going to, whose couch I'm going to be sleeping on, and yada yada. So the next day, my district manager was in and he was giving me some very nice compliments, and said he had plans for me down the road, and yada yada. And I was on my way to the Giants game that night, so I got a call, and it was the drug and alcohol testing center up in South State, and said, okay, you got to come in and take your test. So this was the final test of the 90-day probationary period, right? So I remember I was like, geez, of course it's the night that I'm going to the game with Timbo. So I called up Timbo Cummings. I said, hey, Tim, I got to go do this, and I'll meet you, wherever I met him. And the Giants were playing the Mets, right? So I went up to South City. I took that last test, and I just felt this huge relief, right, come off my shoulders. Like, I accomplished another thing for the courts. I'm getting closer to being where I want to be with Stella. And so I met Tim. We got to the game. We got off the train, and I remember. So we get to the game. We don't always get the same concessions, right? So we had bleacher seats. I think we were in like left center field that night. And Tim went one way, and I went the other way. And he was going to go get his normal 2 or 3 hot dogs and maybe like a root beer or something. And I always kind of just change it up. Sometimes it's nachos, sometimes it's a hot link. I don't really know. But I remember he went his way and I went my way, and I just don't know what happened. I went straight for the beer line. I bought 2 Coors Lights. I pounded them. I got back into the beer line. I got 2 more Coors Lights. I pounded them. I got back in the beer line. I got 2 more Coors Lights. And as I'm walking away, I run into the great Keith Marshall, who I used to work with over at Finn McCool's, and his dad. We call him Pop. And they knew what my journey was like trying to get sober. First time around 2007, and I just kind of was talking with them, and I felt so stupid, because I just had this relapse, basically after like 3 or 4 months of sobriety. So I was talking with them, and then I pounded those last 2, and then I went back in the line. I got 2 more, and so now I had 8 Coors Lights in less than 30 minutes. I'm drinking just like nothing had happened, like I'd just been rolling through all these years. It was a trip. So now I'm feeling loose as a goose. I mean, I'm talking looser than creamed corn. So I go back to the seats, and Tim's probably like, he didn't seem too suspicious, but he was probably like, what the heck just happened in the last 30 minutes? This guy's demeanor is awfully different than it was, on the way up here. So anyway, what happens is we leave, we watch the game, we get on the train, we go back, and I remember I took the bus from the San Bruno train station back to my house. I'm getting off, I'm walking down San Felipe there. The bus stops over there by Celia, San Bruno. And I start walking home, and I see my roommate Mike at the time, and he kind of looked at me like something was up. He kind of knew that something was going on, right? So I went home, I passed out, and I don't know. It was really, really shaky, right? So I woke up the next morning, and I went straight to Newells in San Bruno. And I never even liked hanging out there in the first place. But it was a close bar. I knew they were open early, so I went straight to Newells. I started rocking and rolling. I was having like Jack and Cokes, and I was drinking beers. And I went on a run for a couple of days. So what happens is my house manager got wind that people thought I was drinking, and she told me to go to bed and take a shower. And I went right back out to Newells later that night, and I partied longer, and then I found out that I was getting asked to leave the next day. So now I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm homeless again, So I continue to drink, and I come back to the house, and all my stuff is packed up in a closet and thrown in the front closet, and I'm just like, Jesus, here we go, right? So now I'm just feeling down and out, and I'm out of money. I'm just like, this is terrible. And I was supposed to open up the store the next day, and I didn't make it to work. And I remember I was frantic, and I went in and I was apologizing to my manager, and they took the keys back, and they just let me be a server, and they said, we can't have you managing in this situation. And I was in so much fear and anxiety at the time. I remember I was confessing my alcoholic problem with him. I was telling him I was homeless, and it was just a big fiasco, right? So they had me on the schedule for a few more weeks, and I was serving, and this guy Tim was a server at my job, and he let me crash his place up at the top of Hillsdale Boulevard one night. And there's this new hostess named Melissa, and she had just graduated high school, and she was 18, and her parents had gotten her an apartment in Belmont, and so now I'm over there hanging out with her and her 18-year-old friends drinking beers at night just for a place to crash. So I got a lot of support from the people that I worked with, and people were offering to let me stay at their place, but at this point, I felt so low. I didn't really want to stop drinking. I just was like ready to throw my hands up. I was just so upset and just over it. So I think I drank for a couple of weeks. And I remember I was at work one night, and we used to have these carafes of wine. It was like this bottomless wine thing that we'd offer at Macaroni Grill. And I remember I'd be pounding wine right out in front of everybody, right out in the dining room, like it was nobody's business, right? And I think somebody had reported me. I'm not really sure, but I remember I started getting that burning in my esophagus, and I was fearing of internal bleeding. I felt faint, and I was like, oh shit, here we go. Time to go to the hospital. And I remember I pulled my manager, Jeff, aside, and I said, Jeff, I need to call an ambulance. I need to go to the hospital. And one of the most embarrassing moments of my life is getting carried on a stretcher right on my job. I'm right out in front, and I'm thrown up on the stretcher, and they took me away, and I wasn't on the schedule next week, and I came back, and I went to talk to my manager at the time, Russ, about it, and he was just like, they gave me they found some out for a reason to terminate me. So basically, a few months prior, apparently I had written the wrong, I typed in the wrong tip amount on a credit card slip, and they used that as a reason for termination. They said they got a complaint or something like that. So anyway, they're looking for an out, and it's just like this in any corporate restaurant. It's AtWill employment in California, and I had to accept it, and I didn't deserve to work there anymore based on my behavior, between the drinking and not showing up and opening the store, and then drinking inside the job and hitting on the 18-year-old waitress. I'm 35 years old at the time, so I'm 35. I'm sleeping on the floor of an apartment of an 18-year-old with her 18-year-old friends. This girl could drink. She was a little bit hefty, but she wasn't too big, but she's 18 years old, and she's pounding handles of vodka. Big, I couldn't even drink like that. Pounding handles of vodka like a 250-pound truck driver. It was incredible. So I felt really low, and I remember there's this other dude that I worked with And he was about 10 years older than me, so he's closer to 50 at the time. And me and him were sitting on our couch, and I'm just like, what are we doing, man? I go, we're drinking booze at an 18-year-old girl's house. Yeah, it's just like, what the hell's going on here? So I had to go pick up all my stuff at my clean and sober house, and I called a cab. A cab driver showed up, and I threw all the stuff into the cab, right? Now, luckily for me, at the time, Public Storage was having a Memorial Day sale blowout, so I was able to get a 5x5 storage unit for $54 per month, and I load up all the stuff, right? So this cab driver's pissed. So we get down there. I had like maybe $130 to my name. I get to the office, and I'm talking to the guy trying to set up the thing, and the cab driver's in a big hurry to get out of there, so he started dumping my stuff all out of the parking lot. So I'm trying to explain to the guy, look, this guy's got to go. Give me the keys to this storage unit. And so he wants me to fill out all these forms and do all this stuff. I do this dance. I go, look, just help me out, man. So I pick up all this stuff. I throw it into the storage unit all over the floor. So I got my stuff all safe, my clothes at least. And I was just out of it, man. I was just so down and out. So now I got no money. I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I started looking for work, and you just get to a place where you're tired of inconveniencing your friends and family. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna sleep on the bus again. I'm not gonna keep going to these people's homes. I'm not gonna call any of my friends. I'm not gonna get it. You know, I was telling Daniela and Jen and Mike this the other day when I was visiting. I said I didn't want to call people anymore because I had nothing good to say. It wasn't Happy Dan Banchero anymore. I wasn't Dan the Man Banchero anymore. I was a miserable, defeated, frustrated, unaccepting, unforgiving human being. It's just the way it was. And I didn't want to be the guy that calls up saying, my life sucks, you know? So people didn't know how to handle the situation. They didn't know what to think. Some people would call, some people wouldn't call, you know, and it was uncomfortable for everybody. This is the circle of engulfment of alcoholism or drug addiction. So I'm terminated. I got nowhere to go. I'm sleeping on this bus, and I went on this drinking run for a little bit. I remember I ran into this guy that I met at the fellowship at the clubhouse there in San Carlos. His name was Charlie, and I had met him a few times before at groups, and he said he was telling me about how he was sleeping on top of the roof of the insurance building next door to Carl Jr. And he told me, why don't you stay out here? I remember my buddy, my old sponsor, Smiling Rob, he told me a couple years prior, why don't you sleep out in the creek outside of the clubhouse and get sober here? And I was so tired of rehab, clean sober homes, and I was tired of everything. I didn't want to bring anybody else into my madness, and I just wanted to just take responsibility for my life the way it was. And I'm not talking about this in a noble way. I just had so much pride. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So I took him up on his offer, and he kind of showed me the ropes. And this was the beginning of many relationships at this fellowship in 2014. I'm going to get into that in the next episode. 2014 was much like the year of 1992 for me. It was a pivotal year. 92 was the year that my father died. It was the year that I moved into an apartment at Lincoln Circle, Millbrae, after we lost our home in San Bruno. I met all these new guys that I'd eventually be lifetime friends with at Lincoln Circle. And this 2014 reminds me a lot of that year. It was just, so something happened that year that I learned a lot about myself and about what's necessary in life. So I'm going to talk about homelessness in the next episode and how I got through it. So Dr. Wayne Dyer breaks down the Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, right? I've quoted this many times before. So in the 33rd verse of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, "One who understands others has knowledge. One who understands himself has wisdom. Mastering others requires force. Mastering the self needs strength. If you realize that you have enough, you are truly rich. One who gives himself to his position surely lives long. One who gives himself to the Tao, or the way, surely lives forever." My focus was not on myself, it was on others. So Lao Tzu also has the Hua Hu Ching. This is by Brian Walker, his translation. This is the 60th verse of the Hua Hu Ching. The mystical techniques for achieving immortality are revealed only to those who have dissolved all ties to the gross worldly realm of duality, conflict, and dogma. As long as your shallow worldly ambitions exist, the door will not open. Devote yourself to living a virtuous, integrated, selfless life. Refine your energy from gross and heavy to subtle and light. Use the practices of the integral way to transform your superficial worldly personality into a profound divine presence. By going through each stage of development along the integral way, you learn to value what is important today in the subtle realm rather than what appears desirable tomorrow in the worldly realm. Then the mystical door will open, and you can join the unruling rulers and uncreating creators of the vast universe. So, self-mastery is what it's all about. Luckily, I've been able to learn and live. Some of us don't get to live. We have to learn, and we don't live. Some of us. So, you know, through misfortune comes great fortune. You know, you just never know what doors are going to open. You just got to be aware of it. I had to grasp and accept things for the way they were, and move forward from there. Because there's some great gifts that seemed like catastrophes, but they're just in disguise. So now that we're done with my brief stint in San Bruno in 2014, we're going to be moving into my days at the creek outside, where I learned how to be homeless for the first time. And I'll share a little bit on that. But until then, I want you all to have a great weekend. And remember, sick people hurt sick people, you know? And people take advantage of that. You know, sometimes hurt people, you know, and that's just the way it is. You got to be aware. We're all doing the best we can with what we know at the time. And that's pretty much it. I'm doing my best not to be resentful at others and accept things for the way they are. Because many people had to accept me for what I was for many, many years. And I let many people down. Today, I'd like to think I conduct myself in a way where I'm of use to my fellows. So here's to feeling good all the time. Thanks for joining me on the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. And if you like what you hear, share it with somebody else.